Hey YouTube. Hey, I just wanted to practice doing the RNAV GPS landing here at the Grand Canyon National Park Airport. I struggled with it twice before while I was doing live streams, and I figured out what I was doing wrong. You can in fact do an RNAV landing here, so it's not that you can't. It was just mistakes on my part. So I'd like to record this and you all will be able to learn from some of the mistakes that I've been making, and perhaps as I review this video myself in the future, if I ever have trouble doing an RNAV landing with the G530, I can use this as a reference and a guide. But I'm just doing a replay right now. I've already done the flight. I didn't think to record it. Well, not that I didn't think. I didn't know that it was going to be a success, but since it was, I figured I'd go ahead and record it. So, in this flight, I ended up having to adjust to magnetic north with my heading indicator. I set the heading indicator to 030. I set my VOR1, well, it was already set, but it's set to 030. I'm still using the same flight plan that I had for my flight through the Grand Canyon. You can see there's an aircraft coming in for a landing now, and I'm not abiding by the rules, and I'm taking off from here. Initially, I was not intending to record this. This was just for myself. I just wanted to get into the air and practice the landing. Following, air safety procedures and whatnot wasn't something that I was really worried about at the time. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, I guess. So what I did was I flew out to Carms. I didn't want to fly the hold, so I initiated the leg for Hapley, so it would engage in that. At some point I got to where I started stalling because I was paying attention to the GPS. It happens to me sometimes when I'm not paying so much attention to what the aircraft's doing. I'm playing with the GPS, and the next thing I know I stall. But I usually don't worry about the stalls because stalls really, you don't want to crash, obviously, but stalls aren't something that you need to get overly worked up about or anxious about. You can, nose down, gain airspeed, and then once you're gaining airspeed, you can do another altitude hold if you're using your autopilot, or just get the plane settled again, and then go back to well, in my case, fiddling with the GPS. So what I was doing wrong, I'm going to go ahead and tell on myself early, and then you'll be able to see me do it later. But on the autopilot here, you need to hit both the approach and altitude. So when you hit altitude the first time, it just does an altitude hold. But when you have approach selected and you press altitude, it's telling the autopilot that you want to intercept the glide slope, or the glide path in the case of an RNAV landing. It's technically glide path. However, on the autopilot, it indicates GS for glide slope. So that's why I've been saying it. I see that acronym there, and I just say glide slope. But technically, with an RNAV landing, it is a glide path. With an ILS landing, it's a glide slope. I don't know why the names can't just be interchangeable or used the same for both, or why there's two. That wasn't me. So initially, too, I was using, well, you can see that I had the carbon fiber John Fly cockpit here, but I was also in the livery for the COVID-19 aircraft that I was testing out the other day. I just wanted to put instead of having the beige in here, I figured the gray would look better. Now these indicators, I didn't copy over the instruments, so these don't have the carbon fiber, but if I were to switch, and later in the video I do end up switching to the other livery, the Snack Air livery, I switch to that, and then you'll be able to see, or perhaps you'll be able to see, the carbon fiber on the instrument panel as it is with that library. I'm actually thinking of removing those instruments from the Snack Air library because I don't really like the carbon fiber on the instruments themselves. I like the clarity and the clearness, the gray in the background. I just feel better about it when they're like that. I don't like the carbon fiber there. Just seems like a bit much. But this carbon fiber cockpit with the gray and the green, it looks good with this aircraft. I think it's a good match. It also goes well with Snack Air, but when you see this aircraft from the outside and the gray there and then the gray on the inside, it is a good pairing. So I like it. And if you like it too, leave a comment, let me know. Subscribe if you haven't. Every subscribe, well, it helps me build the channel and keeps me motivated to continue doing it. I really did struggle with this, so you'll see the airplane stall. I'll be all over the place, fighting with it, doing a lot of trim. You know, for a long time the plane just wanted to nose up. It's like once I make a mistake with the autopilot, it's like I've got to do a whole lot of trim to get the plane just to fly straight and level again. But I did get it. So once I finally got on the glide slope, I was actually not entirely lined up with the runway, so I had to fly at an angle, or the autopilot was rather flying at an angle to intercept on the vertical aspect. So it did a turn at the very last minute on, you know, towards the runway, and then I disconnected from the autopilot and landed. But it did work. So that's the point of making this video, to demonstrate that it was my mistake and that it does work. Could potentially fast forward a little bit. We don't necessarily need to watch the whole flight, but I was thinking, you know, you could, if you wanted to see the whole struggle that I went through. I don't know where exactly I need to fast forward to in order to capture all the pertinent information, so I was just going to play the whole video all the way through. I realized too, when I do, actually you might be able to hear the sound. I'm hoping you can hear the aircraft's noises as well as usual with the replay. That remains to be seen. Yeah, I hear it when I go outside the aircraft. Okay, that's good. I'm happy with that. Apparently I haven't switched to the Snack Air library yet, but I will. You'll see me open the menu, select it, and then it will change. Unless the replay leaves all of that out, I don't know. This will be the first video I've actually recorded just doing a replay. Typically I do the live stream and go that route, but first time for everything. So it looks at this point that I had selected approach, and I wanted to see what it would do when I selected approach, and then immediately when I did, it stopped. It like just started turning around, and that part was kind of confusing to me. I have it on nav, you know, and I was following the GPS, and as soon as I select approach, it just wants to go a different way, and you know, I'm scratching my head thinking, why is it doing this? So at that point I was probably verifying that my magnetic north and my heading indicator were matched up good, and I did make adjustments with that. You might not actually get to see the adjustments that I made in the replay, but I was making adjustments to the heading indicator here after looking at the compass. So I let it fly to see if it would just turn back around eventually. and I should probably keep pointed down here so we can see what's happening on the autopilot, because I switched back and forth in these buttons several times as I was playing with it, trying to get an idea of what I needed to be doing and what I was doing wrong. I'm fairly certain I had done an RNAV landing with a G530 before, but you know, because I'm flying the G1000 and GTN 750, you know, the procedures are slightly different in interacting with the different Garmin devices. So, you know, the G530, I think, is, in my opinion, the most challenging of the three devices, because you have to be more mindful of your instruments on this. When you're using the glass panel, the G1000, um, you don't have to be as mindful with all of your instruments. It just, you know, I can set the flight plan, activate the approach, click the approach button on the autopilot, and know that it's going to do what it needs to. Okay, I switched the livery there, so I don't know if you can see it on YouTube or not, but if you look at these instruments, you can see some of the carbon fiber in there, and I'll switch outside the aircraft so you can see that I did switch to the Snack Air library. Okay, so we're established on the localizer. I do have approach selected, even though I hadn't quite intercepted the glide path yet. I was just messing with the autopilot, just kind of flying around, seeing what would happen. Now I'm adjusting the heading indicator right now, tuning it in to get it perfectly, or as perfect as I could get it with magnetic north. So I adjusted it, I don't know, maybe 5 times, just to get it right on the money. I'm flying about 70 knots right now, probably not paying attention very much to what the engine's doing. I may have had the sound turned down, I don't know, but I'm hoping that when I click on this, it shows up. Now, I clicked on it deliberately just now, but I'm hoping that the replay actually shows me clicking on it, but I kind of have a feeling it won't. Because I think at some point, because I was stalling, I had to do a reverse course and, you know, gain airspeed to bring it out of the stall, and then maybe also some altitude to get back on track for intercepting the glide path. Right now we're headed directly to the airport. Everything looks calm and good right now, as though it were going perfectly, but we're probably very close to the beginning of my primary struggle. I thought about using another airport that I'm more familiar with and have flown many times over and over, you know, when I'm practicing things. But I decided, no, I want to make it work at the Grand Canyon. Just being stubborn with myself. Okay, I've intercepted the glide path well, I mean, we're there at the glide path right now, and here I'm messing with the buttons, trying to figure out how I make the autopilot actually engage and, you know, stay on the glide slope. So that's what I'm messing with. I kept hitting approach and nav, approach and nav, approach and nav, and then it didn't occur to me to hit the altitude button. But I remembered at some point in one of the videos I had made that I remembered seeing GS or glide slope. So I was trying to figure out which button do I need to make that, do I need to push to make that happen? And that's when the plane started stalling. So I tried doing a little recovery here. I am gaining a little extra airspeed. I had also deployed some flaps, and I probably retracted them when I realized I was stalling. I've turned the autopilot off at this point. Now it just wants to nose up, so I'm probably giving it a ton of trim. And trying to get back down to the glide path. But see, we're getting relatively close to the runway now, and so at some point I'm fairly certain I did turn around. I don't want to overspeed, overstress the aircraft, or try to really force the landing. I mean, sometimes I force it a little bit when I know I can do it, but when I'm, at a higher altitude, I don't think you should be doing that with a real aircraft. I think you should circle back, approach it from the right altitude and do things in a better way. But when you're in a simulator, sometimes you just kind of skip all of that, or at least I do. But in this instance, I was wanting to just make the RNAV landing work, so I circled back. I think I pulled up the G530, I hit the proc button, and I activated the approach again, which took me back to the hold. Once I got to the hold again, I activated the leg for happily, which is right here, this fix, and then started trying to play with the autopilot again for the RNAV landing. Here I am, looks like nosing up considerably and stall shortly. Or maybe I actually prevented the stalls, but I was getting very close to stalling. If I didn't actually stall, I don't remember. I had the volume down, so I didn't actually hear it buzz or give me any indicator that it had stalled, other than the fact that I was right there and I was adjusting the throttle and flat to compensate. Autopilot is off at this point, and we're heading back towards Hapley and the hold. The hold starts at the Carnes fix, as you can see here. I'm kind of curious if I had turned the landing and taxi lights on yet. I did turn them on for when I remembered to do it this time. Okay, so I've turned the autopilot back on for the GPS. We didn't quite make it to Hapley either. Oh, I think it is going. No, it's okay. I was selected approach. Alright, now I'm playing with the altitude button, probably doing an altitude hold. And then I hit it again, and there's my glide slope. I'm like, oh, okay, that's how I get my glide slope back. So once I saw the GS, I was like, I bet you I need approach and glide slope, as well as nav selected, in order for this to work. So I used that going into my next approach. And see, I'm already on the glide slope, but I'm not localized. I'm not aligned with the runway at all. So nav, or the autopilot, is trying to line me up, but it goes at an angle. It doesn't go at right angles. It goes at like 30-degree angles. So it's flying right, close to the beginning of the runway. Let's see. Let me nose up, or just move the camera up so you can see. See, we're kind of heading out this way, and then at the last minute it turns in. I turn off the autopilot and land. But at this point, the autopilot is set and everything is working, and I have to, it turned out, I was like, why isn't that needle moving at all? and I was actually trying to turn the aircraft, but because I have it set for the landing, it was not allowing me to turn the aircraft at all. So I gave up with that and said I'll turn it at the last minute, disengage, turn, whatever. But I was descending, so I knew I was on the glide slope or the glide path, and it appeared like it was trying to do the landing. So I felt good that it was working. And I think I've deployed my flaps again, and you can see I'm at 60 knots. I've got at least 2 stages of flaps there, but I was going to look to see. Yeah, so I haven't done my final flaps yet, and I don't think that I did. I was worried about winds, and I just wanted to primarily focus on the actual RNAV landing, so I was not worried about doing 3 stages of flaps. Many of my landings I do. Sometimes I just do 2. It depends on feel, how I feel about it. So what I'm watching right now is VOR1 needle. I'm waiting to see when it gets to that second dot there. And when I see that, I'll make mention of it. You're welcome to watch it as well. But I'm going to call it out deliberately. But at this point, being on the glide slope and knowing that I had intercepted it, you know, I was kind of having a little happy moment. Hey, I got it. I figured it out. Now I know what to do an RNAV landing with the G530. It's the little things make me happy. Sometimes just sipping a nice hot cup of coffee can make me happy. If it's fresh and tastes good. So that needle still hasn't budged. And see, I was kind of worried about that. I'm like, okay, it looks like I've intercepted the glide slope, but why is it not, that needle not budging? I'm so close right now. But I think it's because the instruments or whatever things are guiding us in, those things that are in place, they are, you know, tied in very tightly. So there's not a wide berth there. You got to be right on it, and so it's very sensitive, and it doesn't budge until you're right there. And now you can see we're perfectly aligned horizontally and vertically. I'm about to disengage the autopilot. I did let it get a little closer, but I wasn't lined up perfectly, and that might be because magnetic north changed, or maybe I didn't have my VOR1 or something set just perfectly, or maybe the winds was pushing me over. But I waited, and then at the last minute I disengaged and landed. Okay, there it's off, and now the plane is under my control. I created a new playlist for how-tos that I'm gonna eventually start populating with videos. I think I will go ahead and throw this video in there, and because at least from my perspective, being able to demonstrate where my mistakes were and what buttons need to be pushed in order to make it work. The only thing that's not in this video is, programming the G530, but in the future I can make another video. And many of my videos, when I'm, before I take off, I usually set the GPS and I demonstrate as I fly what I'm doing. So a lot of what I have out there could essentially be used as a how-to or tutorial, but I want to put specific things out there, so that if anybody's looking for exactly this is what you need to do, and if you want to make it work, then it will be available and easily found. So that'll just be a playlist, and over time I'll add more videos to that. Alright, YouTube, thank you for watching. See you next time.